New Eden was the smallest of humanity's 43 colonies. It sat on the very edge of explored space, so far from Earth that messages took nearly 2 weeks to arrive. The planet was green and peaceful, covered in vast farmlands and small towns connected by dirt roads. Only 2.3 million people lived there, most of them farmers, teachers, doctors, and engineers who had left the crowded cities of the inner colonies to build something simple and good. Governor Elena Vasquez stood on her balcony that morning, watching the sunrise paint the wheat fields gold. She had been governor for 12 years, and in all that time, nothing truly bad had ever happened on New Eden. There were no wars here, no great political struggles, just ordinary people living ordinary lives. Her daughter Maria, 17 years old, was still asleep in her room. In 3 months, Maria would leave for university on Earth. Elena tried not to think about how empty the house would feel without her. The first sign that something was wrong came at exactly 7:42 in the morning. The planetary defense system, which had never detected anything more threatening than a wayward asteroid, suddenly lit up with hundreds of contacts. Elena's communication device buzzed with an emergency alert, and she ran inside to answer it. "Governor," said Defense Coordinator Thomas Webb, his voice tight with fear, "we have 400 unidentified warships entering orbit. They're not responding to hails. They're not human." Elena felt her blood turn cold. In the century since humanity had joined the galactic community, there had been tensions with other species, but never open conflict. Humanity was considered a minor power spread thin across too many colonies, technologically average, politically divided. Most alien empires ignored them entirely. "Which species?" she asked. "Vecthari," Webb replied. "Governor, we have no real defenses, just the basic orbital platforms. If they attack, get everyone into the shelters," Elena ordered. "Now, every city, every town, every farm, move." The shelters had been built decades ago when the colony was first established, a standard precaution that everyone hoped would never be needed. They could hold the entire population for months if necessary. But Elena knew, looking at the tactical display showing 400 warships, that shelters might not matter. The Vecthari Dominion was known throughout the galaxy as conquerors. They had absorbed dozens of species into their empire over the past 1,000 years. They enslaved populations, stripped worlds of resources, and crushed any resistance with overwhelming force. But they had never shown interest in human space before. New Eden was tiny, remote, and poor. There was nothing here worth taking. Unless, Elena realized with growing horror, they weren't here for resources. Unless they were here to send a message. The communication system crackled, and an alien voice filled the room. The universal translator converted the harsh Vecthari language into flat, emotionless English. "Human colony designated New Eden. You are now property of the Vecthari Dominion. Your people will serve the Dominion as labor units. Resistance will result in termination. You have 1 hour to surrender all government officials and disable your orbital defenses. There will be no negotiation." Elena's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady when she replied. "This is Governor Elena Vasquez of New Eden. We are a peaceful colony under the protection of the United Human Federation. Any hostile action against our people will be considered an act of war against all of humanity." There was a long pause. Then the Vecthari commander laughed. It was a cold, clicking sound that made Elena's skin crawl. "Humanity has no power here, Governor. Your species is weak and scattered. Your nearest military forces are months away. Your government will protest, perhaps file complaints with the Galactic Council, and eventually they will accept what has happened. This is how the galaxy works. The strong take, the weak serve. Your hour begins now." The transmission ended. Elena immediately sent a priority message to Earth, knowing it would take 12 days to arrive. She contacted the other colonies, the Federation Council, anyone who might help. But the Vecthari commander was right about one thing: help was very far away. She found Maria in the hallway, already dressed, her face pale but determined. In her hands was a small recording device. "Mom," Maria said, "whatever happens, the galaxy needs to see it. They need to know what happened here." Elena pulled her daughter into a tight embrace. "Get to the shelter," she said. "Promise me." "I promise," Maria said. "But I'm going to record everything first." everything. They are passed too quickly. Across New Eden, people crowded into shelters. Parents carried sleeping children. Elderly couples held hands. Teachers counted their students again and again, terrified of losing even one. The planet's tiny security force, just 3,000 officers trained for peacekeeping. Not war, took positions at shelter entrances, armed with weapons that might as well have been toys against orbital bombardment. When the hour ended, the Vekthari did not wait for a response. They already knew what Elena would say. No human governor would ever surrender their people to slavery. The first plasma bombardment struck the capital city at 8:43 in the morning. Elena watched from the government bunker as buildings she had known for decades turned to ash in seconds. The Vekthari were not trying to minimize casualties. They were making a statement. For 6 hours, the bombardment continued. The Vekthari targeted population centers, infrastructure, and communication arrays. They specifically avoided the shelters at first, not out of mercy, but because they wanted survivors. Slaves were valuable. Corpses were not. But when small groups of humans began to fight back, security officers with rifles, farmers with hunting weapons, ordinary people refusing to surrender, the Vekthari response was immediate and brutal. Entire districts were leveled. Anyone who resisted died. By the end of the 6 hours, 847,000 people were dead. Nearly a third of the colony's population, gone in a single day. The survivors, 1.4 million men, women, and children, were herded from the shelters by Vekthari ground troops. They were loaded onto massive transport ships like cattle, families separated, screaming children torn from their parents' arms. Elena watched it happen, powerless, as Vekthari soldiers dragged her from the bunker. She managed one final act before they took her communication device. She sent a burst transmission containing all the data she had collected: casualty reports, recordings of the bombardment, evidence of war crimes. She had no idea if it would reach anyone. In the chaos, one small shuttle escaped. It was an old cargo vessel that had been in for repairs when the attack began. The pilot, a young woman named Sarah Chen, had hidden with 11 other survivors in the maintenance bay. When the Vekthari ground troops moved toward the spaceport, Sarah made a desperate decision. She launched the shuttle without clearance, without a flight plan, flying low through the smoke and debris while Vekthari fighters searched the skies above. By some miracle, she reached the edge of the atmosphere before they spotted her. By an even greater miracle, she made it to hyperspace before they could catch her. On that shuttle were 12 survivors, including Maria Vasquez. Maria had kept her promise to her mother. She had recorded everything: the bombardment, the destruction, the screams of the dying, and the faces of the Vekthari commanders who ordered it all. The shuttle limped through hyperspace for 3 days, its damaged engines barely functioning. Sarah didn't know if anyone would receive their distress signal. She didn't know if anyone was even listening. On Earth, in the massive communication center that monitored all signals from human space, a young technician named James Morrison was working the night shift. It was quiet, as it usually was. Routine traffic from the colonies, merchant vessel reports, nothing special. Then his screen lit up with an emergency beacon from New Eden. James played the attached message, and his blood went cold. Maria Vasquez's face appeared on the screen, smeared with dirt and tears, her voice breaking as she spoke. "This is Maria Vasquez of New Eden Colony. The Vekthari Dominion attacked us without warning. They killed hundreds of thousands. They took everyone else. My mother, the governor, is among the captured. I'm sending all the footage I recorded. Please, someone has to see this. Someone has to help. We're on a damaged shuttle, 12 survivors, coordinates attached. Please." James immediately flagged the message as priority 1 and sent it up the chain of command. Within hours, it had reached the Federation Council, the Joint Chiefs, and the President herself. The footage spread through the halls of power like fire. Men and women who had spent their careers in politics watched in stunned silence as plasma fire rained down on schools, hospitals, and homes. They saw children running through burning streets. They saw Vekthari soldiers laughing as they separated families. They saw the face of Governor Elena Vasquez, defiant to the last, as she was dragged away in chains. For the first time in living memory, the United Human Federation was completely unified. There were no debates, No political divisions, no arguments about proper response. Every leader, from every faction, said the same thing. This could not stand. But the galaxy didn't know that yet. The galaxy expected humanity to do what every minor species did. When a major power attacked them, protest, complain, file grievances with the Galactic Council, and eventually accept the loss. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not like other species. The silence from human space lasted exactly 14 days. During that time, the rest of the galaxy continued with its normal business. Trade flowed. Diplomats argued. The Galactic Council met to discuss various minor matters, including a brief mention of the incident at New Eden. The Vecthari ambassador to the Council, a tall creature with gray skin and cold black eyes, spoke dismissively when the topic was raised. A minor enforcement action, he said. The human colony was harboring criminals and refused to cooperate with Dominion authorities. The matter has been resolved. There's nothing to discuss. Several council members looked uncomfortable, but no one challenged him. The Vecthari Dominion was a major power with 80,000 warships. Humanity was a minor species with, by most estimates, perhaps 15 to 20,000 military vessels spread across 43 colonies. The math was simple. The Vecthari were strong. Humanity was weak. And the galaxy had long ago learned not to interfere when the strong punished the weak. Only the ambassador from the Velith Collective, a species that had barely escaped Vecthari conquest a century ago, spoke up. Where are the human representatives? She asked. Why are they not here to speak for themselves? The council chamber fell silent. For the first time, the assembled diplomats realized that the human delegation had been absent for 2 weeks. Their offices were empty. Their communication channels were closed. No one knew where they had gone. Perhaps they are afraid. The Vecthari ambassador said with a cold smile. They should be far from the council chamber, in the heart of human space. Something unprecedented was happening. The United Human Federation had not been united for nearly a century. Since the days of the first colonies, humanity had divided into factions, political parties, national remnants, corporate interests, and ideological movements. They argued constantly. They competed for resources. They sometimes even threatened each other with military force, though actual human-on-human warfare had been avoided since the Unification Wars ended 200 years ago. But on the day the footage from New Eden reached Earth, every faction leader received the same message from President Catherine Park. The Vecthari have killed 847,000 of our people. They have enslaved 1.4 million more. I am invoking the covenant of blood. This is not a request. This is not a suggestion. This is a command. The covenant of blood was ancient by human standards, a pact signed after the Unification Wars that bound all of humanity together in one specific circumstance. If any human population anywhere was attacked, enslaved, or destroyed by an outside force, all of humanity would respond as one. There would be no negotiations. There would be no half measures. Every resource, every ship, and every soldier would be committed until the threat was eliminated. The covenant had never been invoked. Most people had forgotten it existed, but the faction leaders had not forgotten. And when they saw the footage from New Eden, the burning cities, the dead children, the screaming families torn apart, not one of them hesitated. Within hours, orders went out to every human world. All military personnel were recalled to active duty. All reserve fleets were activated. All civilian shipyards began converting cargo vessels for military use. All orbital factories switched to producing weapons and ammunition. And deep in classified facilities that officially did not exist, engineers began activating something that the galaxy had never suspected. Humanity had not been idle during its century in the galactic community. They had watched. They had learned. They had seen how the Vecthari and other major powers treated weaker species, and they had quietly prepared for the day when someone might treat humanity the same way. The result of that preparation was hidden in shipyards scattered across human space, a secret fleet of warships that had been built over decades, maintained in perfect condition, and never revealed to anyone. The official human navy numbered around 18,000 vessels. The secret fleet contained more than 280,000 more. Admiral Marcus Chen, Supreme Commander of the United Human Navy, stood in the control center of Luna Base and watched as the reports came in. Ships were launching from every colony. Reserve officers who had retired decades ago were returning to duty. Young people who had never considered military service were signing up by the millions. But more importantly, the secret shipyards were opening their doors. Chen had known about the hidden fleet his entire career. He had helped build some of those ships himself as a young officer. But even he was amazed at the scale of what humanity had prepared. 300,000. His aide said quietly, looking at the final tally. "We actually have 300,000 warships." Chen nodded slowly. "The founders of the Federation understood something that most species forget," he said. "Peace is not the absence of weapons. Peace is having so many weapons that no one dares attack you. We hoped we would never need them. We hoped wrong." The fleet began to gather near Jupiter, far from prying eyes. Ship after ship emerged from hyperspace battleships and cruisers, destroyers and frigates, carriers and support vessels. They came from every colony, wearing the flags of a dozen factions that had been rivals just weeks ago. Now they flew together under a single banner, the Galactic Council, finally becoming concerned about the silence from human space, sent an observation vessel to investigate. The observers were a mixed group of diplomats and intelligence officers from several neutral species, authorized to enter human territory and report back on what they found. What they found changed everything. The observation vessel emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter and immediately stopped. The crew stared at their sensors in disbelief. Then they stared out the viewports, because the sensors had to be wrong. They were not wrong. Stretching across space in every direction, filling the void around Jupiter like a vast metal cloud, was a fleet of warships so large that the sensors could not count them all. The observation vessel's computer worked for several minutes before producing a final estimate. 300,000. 247 combat vessels. The largest fleet ever assembled in recorded galactic history. The observation vessel's captain, a Velith named Kirana, had served in her people's navy during the last Vekthari War. She had seen fleets before. She had never seen anything like this. "Send a message to the Galactic Council," she ordered, her voice barely a whisper. Tell them we were wrong about the humans." The council received the message 3 days later. The chamber erupted in chaos. Species that had dismissed humanity as a minor power suddenly realized they had been living next to a sleeping giant. The Vekthari ambassador demanded to know if the report was accurate, then demanded to know why the council had not detected this fleet before, then demanded that the council order humanity to stand down immediately. That no one listened to him. Everyone was too busy trying to understand how they had missed this. The answer was simple, though they would not learn it for some time. Humanity had learned from the Velith, from the Kasari, from a dozen other species that had been conquered or enslaved by major powers. They had learned that advertising your strength only invited preemptive attacks. So they had built their fleet in secret, hidden in shipyards that looked like mining stations or research facilities, crewed by officers who officially worked civilian jobs, maintained by engineers who were sworn to silence. For 100 years, humanity had prepared for the day someone would make the mistake of attacking them. The Vekthari had just made that mistake. President Park finally broke the silence. She appeared in a broadcast that was transmitted to every inhabited world in the galaxy, human and alien alike. She stood in front of a window that showed the gathered fleet behind her, thousands of warships visible in a single frame. "To the people of the galaxy," she said, her voice calm and cold. 14 days ago, the Vekthari Dominion attacked our colony of New Eden without provocation and without warning. They killed 847,000 innocent people. They enslaved 1.4 million more. They destroyed homes, schools, and hospitals. They laughed while they did it. She paused, letting the words sink in. Many of you expected us to protest, to complain, to ask the Galactic Council for help that would never come. Many of you expected us to count our losses, accept what happened, and move on. Because that is what weak species do. Her eyes hardened. We are not weak. We have never been weak. We simply chose not to show our strength because we preferred peace. We built our fleet hoping we would never use it. We prepared for war praying it would never come. She stepped closer to the camera. The Vekthari took our people. They killed our children. They believed we would do nothing. They were wrong. We are coming for our people. We are coming for justice. And we will not stop until every single human taken from New Eden is returned home. The broadcast ended. In the Vekthari capital, High Commander Zekthan watched the broadcast in stunned silence. His advisors were shouting, demanding explanations, insisting that human space be attacked immediately before the fleet could launch. But Zekthan barely heard them. He was doing math in his head. The Vekthari Dominion had 80,000 warships, a massive force by any standard. But it was spread across an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds. The main battle fleet stationed near the capital numbered only 30,000. Reinforcements would take weeks or months to arrive. The humans had 300,000 warships, and they were already Gatha's journey through hyperspace took 18 days. For the crews of 300,000 warships, it was a time of preparation, training, and quiet fear. Most of them had never seen real combat. The human navy had not fought a major war into centuries, but they had trained for one, and now that training would be tested. Admiral Chen spent most of the journey reviewing intelligence reports. The Vekthari Dominion was not a small enemy. They had conquered dozens of species over 1,000 years. Their military was experienced, well-equipped, and utterly ruthless. Their empire contained hundreds of worlds, billions of soldiers, and resources that dwarfed anything humanity possessed. But Chen had advantages the Vekthari did not expect. First was numbers. The Vekthari had 80,000 warships in total, but they were scattered across their empire. The main defensive fleet guarding their core worlds numbered only 30,000. Chen was bringing 10 times that many. Second was surprise. The Vekthari had never faced an enemy willing to commit everything to a single campaign. They expected humanity to attack cautiously, to probe their defenses, to fight a careful war of attrition. They did not expect what Chen had planned. Third was motivation. The Vekthari soldiers fought because they were ordered to fight. The human soldiers fought because 847,000 of their people had been murdered, and 1.4 million more were in chains. There was a difference. On the 15th day, Chen called his senior commanders to a conference aboard his flagship, the UNS Retribution. "We will not fight a conventional campaign," he told them. "The Vekthari expect us to advance slowly, capture territory system by system, and gradually push toward their core worlds. If we do that, they will have time to consolidate their forces, wear us down, and eventually negotiate a settlement that leaves most of our people in slavery." He activated a holographic map showing Vekthari space. "Instead, we will attack everywhere at once. I am dividing our fleet into 47 battle groups. Each group will strike a different sector of Vekthari space simultaneously. We will hit their military installations, their communication networks, their supply lines, and their defensive positions all at the same time. They will not know where to send reinforcements. They will not know which attacks are real and which are diversions. By the time they figure it out, we will already be in their core systems." One of the commanders, Admiral Sarah Okonkwo of the Second Fleet, raised a concern. "Sir, dividing our forces means each battle group will face potentially superior numbers in their sector. We could suffer heavy losses." Chen nodded. "We could, but the Vekthari are spread thin, and they are used to fighting enemies who act predictably. We are going to be chaos. We are going to be everywhere. And we are going to move faster than they can respond." He looked around the room at the faces of his commander's men and women, who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. "One more thing," he said. "Our primary objective is not destroying the Vekthari fleet. Our primary objective is liberating our people. Every battle group will have marine units tasked with locating and rescuing human prisoners. We know the Vekthari have distributed them across at least 30 different labor camps throughout their space. We will hit those camps as fast as we can, before the Vekthari have time to dispose of evidence." Everyone understood what he meant. The Vekthari were not known for their mercy toward prisoners during wartime. On the 18th day, the human armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Vekthari territory. The first system they entered was called Kathrani IV by the Vekthari. a mining colony that processed rare metals for their war industry. It was defended by a garrison of 12 warships. They never had a chance. 30,000 human warships materialized in the system simultaneously, surrounding the garrison on all sides. The Vekthari commander sent a frantic message to the capital warning of the attack. But before he could even finish speaking, the battle was over. The human ships did not waste time with ultimatums or demands for surrender. They simply opened fire with overwhelming force, reducing the garrison to debris in less than 4 minutes. Then they moved on, across Vekthari space. The same scene repeated itself again and again. Human battle groups struck without warning, destroyed defensive positions, and vanished into hyperspace before reinforcements could arrive. The Vekthari command structure, designed for slow and methodical campaigns, could not process information fast enough to respond. High Commander Zekthan received reports of attacks from 17 different sectors in the first hour alone. His tactical officers were overwhelmed, unable to prioritize threats or coordinate defenses. By the time he ordered his main fleet to respond to the first wave of attacks, the second wave had already begun. They are not behaving like a normal enemy, one of his advisors said, his voice shaking. They are not trying to hold territory. They are not advancing in a line. They are simply destroying everything. They are angry, Zekthan said quietly. We killed their children. We enslaved their families. They are not here to conquer us. They are here to punish us. In the Vekthari slave camps, the human prisoners had heard rumors of a coming rescue, but few believed them. They had been captives for nearly 2 months now, subjected to brutal conditions and constant labor. Many had given up hope. Governor Elena Vasquez had not given up hope. She had spent every day since her capture organizing the other prisoners, keeping track of who was where, maintaining what little morale she could. She knew that someone would come for them eventually. She just had to keep her people alive until then. The camp where she was held was on a world called Drennik 7, deep in Vekthari territory. It held approximately 40,000 human prisoners, mostly families from New Eden. The conditions were terrible: cramped barracks, minimal food, forced labor in nearby factories. The Vekthari guards treated them like animals, beating anyone who showed the slightest resistance. On the 22nd day after the invasion began, Elena woke to the sound of explosions. She ran outside with the other prisoners and looked up at the sky. Through the haze of factory smoke, she could see lights flashing in orbit, the unmistakable signs of a space battle. The other prisoners watched in stunned silence as Vekthari defensive satellites were destroyed one by one, replaced by unfamiliar ships descending through the atmosphere. Human ships, they came. Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. They actually came. The liberation of Drennik 7 took less than 3 hours. Human Marines landed in dropships, overwhelming the camp guards and securing the facilities. The prisoners, weak, exhausted, but alive, were loaded onto transport vessels and taken to safety. When the Marine commander found Elena, she was still helping organize the evacuation, making sure every family was accounted for. Governor Vasquez, he said, I have a message for you from Admiral Chen. He handed her a small communication device. Chen's voice came through clearly. Governor, your daughter Maria is safe. She made it back to Earth. She asked me to bring you home. I intend to keep that promise. Elena could not speak. She simply held the device and cried. Across Vekthari space, similar scenes played out at camp after camp. Human battle groups fought their way to every known prison facility, liberating tens of thousands of survivors. The operations were not without cost. Ships were lost. Soldiers died, but the humans pressed forward regardless. The Vekthari tried to fight back. They assembled their scattered fleets, launched counterattacks, and fortified their core worlds. But they were facing an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. An enemy that did not care about casualties. An enemy that could not be intimidated or bargained with. On the 30th day, the human armada finally converged on the Vekthari home system. Zekthan had gathered every available ship, nearly 50,000 warships, the largest defensive force in Vekthari history. He had fortified every planet, every moon, every orbital station. He had prepared for the greatest battle his people had ever fought. The humans arrived with 270,000 ships. They had lost nearly 30,000 vessels in the campaign so far, but it did not matter. They still outnumbered the Vecthari defenders more than 5-1. Zekthan looked at the tactical display and felt something he had never felt in his long military career: despair. "High Commander," his communications officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from the human flagship. Put it through." Admiral Chen appeared on the screen. His face was calm, almost expressionless. "High Commander Zekthan," Chen said, "I am giving you one opportunity to end this. Surrender unconditionally. Release all remaining human prisoners. Disarm your military forces. Accept whatever judgment the galaxy decides for your crimes. If you refuse, we will destroy everything you have built, every warship, every military station, every symbol of your empire's power. You will survive as a species, but the Vecthari Dominion will cease to exist." Zekthan stared at the human admiral for a long moment. 1,000 years of conquest, hundreds of conquered species, an empire that had seemed invincible just 2 months ago. All of it reduced to this a single choice. "The Dominion does not surrender," Zekthan said finally. "We will fight to the last ship. We will make you pay for every inch of space you take. And when your people grow tired of dying, when your politicians demand an end." The liberation of the last human prisoners should have ended the war. The official objective had been achieved. Every man, woman, and child taken from New Eden was now safe and heading home. The Vecthari military was shattered. Justice had been served, but Admiral Chen did not order his fleet to stand down. In his quarters aboard the Retribution, he reviewed the intelligence reports that had been flooding in from across the former Vecthari Empire. What he found made his decision clear. Humanity had not been the first species the Vecthari enslaved. They had not been the 100th. Over 1,000 years, the Dominion had conquered and subjugated dozens of intelligent species. Billions of beings lived under Vecthari rule. Their cultures erased, their freedoms stolen, their lives reduced to endless labor for their masters. And now, with the Vecthari military crippled, those subjugated species were rising up. Across the Empire, slave populations revolted. Conquered worlds declared independence. Species that had lived under the Vecthari boot for centuries saw their chance for freedom and took it. But the Vecthari were not giving up easily. Even with their main fleet destroyed, they still had ground forces, security troops, and enough firepower to crush unorganized rebellions. Reports came in of massacres, of entire populations being punished for daring to resist. The Vecthari were determined to maintain control through terror. Even as their empire collapsed around them, Chen called a meeting of his senior commanders. "We have a choice to make," he said. "We can take our people home and leave the Vecthari to deal with their internal problems, or we can stay and finish what we started." Admiral Okonkwo was the first to speak. "Sir, our original mission is complete. Our people are safe. We have already lost nearly 30,000 ships and tens of thousands of soldiers. The Federation Council may not support an extended campaign." Chen nodded. "You're right. The Council is already sending messages asking when we plan to return. There are political factions on Earth who think we've done enough, that it's not our responsibility to liberate the galaxy." He paused. "But I've been reading reports from the liberated camps. Our people spent months alongside prisoners from other species beings who helped them survive, who shared their food, who risked punishment to show them kindness. When I asked Governor Vasquez what she thought we should do, she said something I can't forget." He pulled up a recorded message on the display. Elena Vasquez's face appeared, tired but determined. "Admiral," she said, "when we were in the camps, there was a Kesari woman named Thalos who worked beside me every day. She gave me half her food rations when I was too weak to work. She held my hand when the guards beat other prisoners. She told me about her children, who were taken from her 20 years ago and sold to labor camps on the other side of the Empire. She never stopped hoping she would see them again." Elena's voice broke slightly. "When the Marines liberated our camp, Thalos asked me if the humans would help her people too. I didn't know what to say. I still don't know what to say. But I know what I hope the answer is." The recording ended. Chen looked around the room. "That's one story. There are millions more like it. The Vecthari built their empire on slavery and terror. They hurt us, but they've been hurting others for 1,000 years. We have the power to end it. The question is whether we have the will." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Admiral James Morrison, commander of the Fourth Fleet, spoke up. "My grandmother used to tell me something," he said. "She said that power without responsibility is just cruelty. We have more power right now than humanity has ever had. 300,000 warships. If we use that power to go home and forget about everyone else the Vekthari hurt, what does that make us? What was the point of building all this strength if we don't use it to help people who can't help themselves?" One by one, the other commanders nodded. "Then we're agreed," Chen said. "We stay. We finish this. Not for conquest, not for territory, for everyone who's been suffering under Vekthari rule." He opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Our people are safe, but our mission is not complete. The Vekthari Dominion has enslaved dozens of species for 1,000 years. Those species are fighting for their freedom right now. They need our help. I will not order any soldier to fight in this extended campaign. You have already done more than anyone could ask. But I am asking for volunteers. Those who wish to stay and help liberate the Vekthari's other victims. Remain in formation. Those who wish to return home, you have earned that right, and no one will think less of you." He waited. Not a single ship left formation. The campaign to liberate the Vekthari Empire took 47 days. Human battle groups spread across Vekthari space, not as conquerors but as liberators. They worked alongside rebel forces from a dozen species, providing military support, medical aid, and supplies. They destroyed Vekthari military installations, freed prison camps, and helped local populations establish their own governments. The Vekthari did not surrender easily. Their remaining forces fought with desperate fury, knowing that defeat meant the end of everything they had built. But they were hopelessly outnumbered, and the populations they had oppressed for centuries were rising up everywhere. On Kesari Prime, human marines fought alongside Kesari rebels to liberate the planetary capital. The battle lasted 3 days and cost thousands of lives on both sides, but when it was over, the Kesari flag flew over their world for the first time in 600 years. On the factory world of Drennik 3, human engineers helped former slaves disable the massive industrial complexes that had been built on their labor. The smoke from the factories had been visible from orbit for centuries. When it finally cleared, the survivors could see blue sky for the first time in generations. On the Vekthari border worlds, entire populations that had been conquered just decades ago reclaimed their independence. Human soldiers helped them establish defensive positions, trained their militias, and ensured that no Vekthari counterattack could reach them. And throughout it all, the galaxy watched in amazement. The Galactic Council, which had been silent during the early days of the war, finally called an emergency session. Ambassadors from every major species attended, eager to understand what humanity intended to do with its newfound power. President Park addressed the council via holographic link. "Distinguished representatives," she said, "I understand your concern. Humanity has just demonstrated military capabilities that no one suspected we possessed. We have dismantled an empire that has terrorized this galaxy for 1,000 years. You are wondering what we will do next. Will we become the new Vekthari? Will we use our strength to dominate and control?" She paused. "The answer is no. We did not build our fleet to conquer. We built it to defend ourselves. The Vekthari forced us to use it, and we chose to use that moment to free everyone they had oppressed, not just our own people. But we have no interest in ruling other species. We have no desire to build an empire. We will return to our own space, resume our normal lives, and hope that we never have to use our military strength again." The Velith ambassador spoke up. "How can we be certain of this? How do we know humanity will not decide, in 10 years or 50, that it deserves more territory, more resources, more power?" Park smiled slightly. "You can't be certain. That's the honest answer. But I can tell you what we believe. We believe that every species has the right to govern itself. We believe that conquest is wrong, regardless of who does it. We believe that the strong should protect the weak, not exploit them. These are not just words. We proved them with blood over the past 2 months." She looked directly at the Velith ambassador. "Your people nearly became another Vekthari conquest a century ago. You escaped, Barely. When we built our secret fleet, we studied your history. We learned from your mistakes. We prepared so that what happened to you would never happen to us. And when we had the power to free everyone else who had suffered like you did, we used it. That is who we are." The council session ended without a formal resolution, but the mood had shifted. Species that had feared humanity now looked at them with something closer to respect. The whispers in the corridors were not about human aggression, but about human mercy. The strange, unprecedented decision to use overwhelming military power to liberate rather than conquer. On the 47th day, the last significant Vecthari military force surrendered. The Dominion, as a political entity, ceased to exist. The Vecthari species survived humanity had made no effort to harm civilians, but their government, their military, and their empire were gone. The worlds they had conquered became independent. The species they had enslaved were free. Admiral Chen received the final surrender aboard the Retribution. The Vecthari admiral who presented it was a young officer named Kethro, who had taken command after every senior commander was either killed or captured. "I surrender the remaining forces of the Vecthari Dominion," Kethro said, his voice bitter but steady. "We accept your terms. We have no choice." Chen nodded. "The terms are simple. All Vecthari military forces will be permanently disbanded. All weapons above personal defense grade will be destroyed. All prisoners and slaves still held anywhere in former Dominion space will be released. The Vecthari people will govern themselves, but they will never again build the weapons to threaten others." Kethro stared at him. "You are not going to execute us?" The human fleet returned home in stages over the following months. Ships that had been damaged needed repairs. Soldiers who had been fighting needed rest, and the galaxy needed time to understand what had happened. Admiral Chen was the last to leave Vecthari space. He spent weeks overseeing the transition, making sure that the newly freed species had the support they needed, that the Vecthari disarmament was proceeding properly, and that no power vacuum would lead to new conflicts. Only when he was satisfied that the situation was stable did he order his flagship home. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. When the Retribution emerged from hyperspace in the Sol system, Chen found a sight waiting for him that he had not expected. Thousands of civilian vessels filled the space around Earth's orbital stations. They carried no weapons, bore no military markings. They were simply people, ordinary citizens, who had come out to welcome the fleet home. As Chen's ship approached, the communication channels filled with cheers, thanks, and tears. He had left as a military commander on a mission of vengeance. He was returning as something else entirely, though he was not sure what to call it. The formal ceremonies took place over the following weeks. There were parades on Earth and on every major colony. There were speeches from politicians, tributes from artists, and endless media coverage. The soldiers who had fought in the campaign were treated as heroes, which made many of them uncomfortable. Chen himself was offered every honor the Federation could provide. He refused most of them. When President Park asked him what he wanted, he thought for a long moment before answering. "I want to make sure this never happens again," he said. "Not to us, not to anyone. I want to build something that will protect every species that can't protect themselves." Park nodded slowly. "The Council has been discussing something similar. Several species have approached us about forming a new alliance, not like the Vecthari Dominion, but something based on mutual protection and shared values. They want humanity to lead it." Chen frowned. "We didn't do this to become leaders. We didn't do this to gain power." "I know," Park said. "That's exactly why they want us to lead. Because we didn't seek power. We just did what was right." The discussions continued for months. Representatives from dozens of species traveled to Earth, sharing their experiences under Vecthari rule, explaining what they needed to rebuild, and expressing their hopes for the future. The Velith, who had nearly been conquered a century ago, were among the strongest advocates for a new alliance. So were the Kasari, the species whose woman had helped Governor Vasquez survive in the camps. Elena Vasquez herself became one of the key voices in the negotiations. She had been reunited with her daughter Maria, and for a while she wanted nothing more than to rest and recover. But she could not forget the beings she had met in the camps, the people from other species, who had shown her kindness when they had nothing to give. "We can't just go back to our normal lives," she told a session of the Federation Council. We have relationships now with species we never knew before. We have responsibilities. The people who helped us survive in those camps are counting on us to help them build something better in the end. The Alliance of Free Species was established exactly 1 year after the attack on New Eden. It was not an empire. No species was required to join. No species was forced to follow orders from a central authority. It was simply a promise. An attack on any member would be treated as an attack on all. Humanity contributed a portion of its fleet to a joint defense force. Other species contributed what they could. The headquarters was established on a neutral world, with representatives from every member species. Admiral Chen was offered command of the joint fleet. He accepted reluctantly, on the condition that he could retire in 5 years and pass the responsibility to the next generation. We can't be the galaxy's protectors forever, he told President Park. We showed what humanity can do when pushed. Now we need to show that we can also step back, share power, and let others take the lead. That's the only way this alliance survives. 5 years later, Chen kept his promise. He retired to a small house on the rebuilt New Eden, which had become a symbol of everything humanity had fought for. The colony was still recovering. 847,000 people had died, and that loss could never be erased. But new settlers were arriving, new buildings were rising, and new children were being born. On the anniversary of the attack, Chen walked through the memorial park that had been built in the capital city. The names of every person who had died were inscribed on a long wall of black stone. Visitors came from across the galaxy to pay their respects. He found Elena Vasquez standing near the end of the wall, looking at a section that held the names of her closest friends. Admiral, she said when she noticed him. Just Marcus now, he said. I'm retired, remember? She smiled slightly. Retirement doesn't seem to suit you. I heard you've been consulting with the Alliance Defense Committee. Old habits, he admitted. I worry sometimes. The Vecthari are defeated, but the galaxy is still dangerous. There will be other threats. There will, Elena agreed. But we've shown what we're capable of. And more importantly, we've shown what we're willing to do for each other. She gestured at the memorial wall. They died because someone thought humanity was weak, because someone thought we wouldn't fight back. That mistake will never be made again. Chen nodded. He looked up at the sky, where he could see the faint lights of ships passing overhead, trading vessels from a dozen species, all moving freely through space that had once been controlled by the Vecthari. I used to wonder if we did the right thing, he said. 300,000 warships, the largest fleet in history. We built all of that in secret, hoping we'd never use it. And then we used it to destroy an empire that had existed for 1,000 years and freed billions of beings in the process. Elena said that double quotes yes. But I still wonder sometimes. Were we right to hide our strength? Were we right to respond the way we did? Did we become something we didn't want to become? Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke carefully. When I was in that camp, there was a moment when I thought I would die there. I thought my daughter would never know what happened to me. I thought the Vecthari would win, and no one would ever care about the people they had taken. She turned to face Chen directly. Then your ships appeared in the sky. Your Marines broke down the gates. Your soldiers carried children to safety. And in that moment, I understood something. What? That strength isn't evil. Weakness isn't virtue. What matters is what you do with the power you have. The Vecthari had power, and they used it to enslave and destroy. Humanity had power, and we used it to protect and liberate. That's the difference. That's the only difference that matters. Chen considered her words. He had spent years wrestling with questions about power and responsibility. But perhaps the answers were simpler than he had made them. The galaxy still doesn't entirely trust us, he said. They've seen what we can do. Some of them are afraid we'll become the next Vecthari. Then we show them they're wrong. Elena said, not with words, with actions. Every day, every year, every generation. We show them that humanity earned its strength, and we use it for good. She smiled. Besides, my daughter is on the Alliance Council now. Maria is going to spend her life building bridges between species, making sure that what happened to New Eden never happens to anyone else. That's the legacy of this war. That's what matters. Chen felt something ease in his chest, a tension he had been carrying since the day He ordered his fleet into battle. He had done terrible things in the name of protecting his people. He had destroyed an empire. He had killed millions of Vecthari soldiers. He had unleashed a war that changed the galaxy forever. But he had also saved 1.4 million humans from slavery. He had freed billions of beings from oppression. He had helped build an alliance that might prevent such horrors from ever happening again. Perhaps that was enough. Perhaps that was all anyone could ask. He looked at the memorial wall one last time, reading the names of the dead. Then he turned and walked away, leaving the past behind. The sun was setting over New Eden, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Somewhere in the distance, children were laughing. Somewhere in orbit, ships were carrying goods and people between worlds that had once been enemies. Somewhere in the galaxy, beings of 100 different species were living in freedom. Because humanity had chosen to fight for them, the war was over. The work of building a better galaxy had just begun. Years passed. Generations rose and fell. The alliance of free species grew stronger, adding new members, resolving disputes peacefully, and maintaining the peace that had been won at such terrible cost. The Vecthari, stripped of their military power, slowly rebuilt their society. Some of them held onto resentment, dreaming of revenge that would never come. But others learned different lessons. They studied what humanity had done, not just the war, but the aftermath. They saw how the humans had chosen mercy over vengeance, how they had helped their enemies rebuild rather than destroying them completely. Some Vecthari began to wonder if their ancestors had been wrong, if strength could be used for protection rather than domination, if there was a better way to exist in the galaxy. It would take centuries before the Vecthari fully reconciled with